Hello and welcome to another expedition podcast with Arthurmauk and Myzrael.
Hello.
Hello.
And today we want to talk about buckets and the influence of buckets and how much value we lay on the buckets, specific regions. And Arthur, let's start with just explaining what the buckets are.
Yeah. If you're new to expeditions, usually what you'll find throughout your picks are just essentially these packs that are given to you. Starts off with 3 picks, including champions, and then moves into packs of 2 without champions. What you'll notice above that is a name, Relic Trackers, Mega Keg, and Shroom and Boom. These things aren't random names given to cards. Essentially, they are the name of the buckets or archetypes that have these cards in them. This is the bucket or archetypes information is publicly known. Riot does publish this in an official spreadsheet, which is available in a link below, and Conan is also showing on screen right now. And at the moment, we have uh, over 70 archetypes throughout, some of them containing 1 region, some of them containing 2, some of them containing more than that even. And essentially, these are the pools through which the cards will be selected to be offered to you during the picks. If you're new to expeditions, then you don't need to learn all of these cards at all. Essentially, you can just pick whatever the game gives you. But if you want to level up and improve your play, it may be worthwhile looking through the archetypes and identifying which archetypes are relatively stronger than others or not, because you can try and influence or game these picks by understanding how the archetypes work.
Exactly. And these archetypes play a huge role because you can basically choose a main archetype or main bucket you want to be in and have a big influence on what actually shows up in here. Because how this basically works is you choose your first 2 champions, and afterwards you will always see the champions in the synergy pick, in the third pick, and then I also made a video about it in separate form if you want to go more in depth and with more examples. But basically, if you pick up Riven, for example, and pick 1, Relic Trackers, then you pick Gangplank, Mega Keg, we will have Relic Trackers and Mega Keg showing up in pick 3. And then we can choose either one of them and a random bucket. And which one we choose will most often show up in these synergy picks. There are also wild picks who will show us random cards. That when we pick up one bucket multiple times, then it will also sometimes show up in the wild picks. And we will do an example draft afterwards. But basically, you can just go for the good cards in each pack, or you can try to avoid bad archetypes, like for example this Mega Keg, and instead aim for good buckets and hope to improve your card quality this way.
Yeah, why is this important? As Conan said, some of the buckets are worse than others, and to improve your win rate, to improve your experience with expeditions, you can choose better buckets and then have more opportunity to see better cards. And from better cards, you have better decks, and from better decks, you have more 7 wins, which is what you are aiming for.
Exactly, and you are sometimes sacrificing single picks that are a little bit worse than the other ones to not move into a specific bucket or to try to stay in one bucket and get picks afterwards that are better. Basically, investing a little bit of deck quality in the future to see better cards in the future. And that the buckets are different strength is actually proven with data. We have this list that our friend Tower of Doom made, where he just took all of the win rates of individual cards and added them to the different buckets. And as you can see, for example, the Demacic win bucket has a 54.7% win rate, whereas the Wildwater Nami bucket only has a 43.5% win rate. So there's a big difference between these buckets, and there's no real bucket that's completely awful or unplayable. But there are stronger buckets, there are weaker buckets, and can definitely influence the overall strength of your deck, depending on which bucket you are at. Okay, and we used to have a little bit of a different approach to buckets. I was very high on it and was valuing the good buckets very much. And Myzrael, what would you say? How do you value the buckets now?
I'm still mostly a good cards drafter. I normally try to pick good cards, except for pick 1 and pick 2 when I just think about much more things to do. There are certain buckets that are worth forcing, and I try to do that sometimes, like Darkness Rising, like Shyvana buckets, because having more dragons is good in expeditions. And I rarely do that and actually go into bad cards to have just better buckets. I had recently a round when I did that, picking like Confront and Dragon Show, I think, to jump into Shyvana bucket, and then it ended up, of course, with 7 wins because Shyvana is pretty broken. So but I'm actually a little too lazy to do that all the time. Since many of the picks doesn't do too much of a difference, and I think the resources that I spend to try to think about how to pick and what to pick and how to approach a certain draft, I think I can spend better. So I prefer my draft to take 1 minute, not half an hour. So I normally just pick the best cards. I see good cards, I pick them, and it works. And it works still. I think the advantage that you can have from forcing buckets is often not worth time that you need to spend to actually do this.
I agree that you don't get a significant advantage, and to be honest, if I just casually play some expedition runs, I don't sit there looking up all the buckets and thinking about which bucket. Like, I mostly memorized these buckets, but I don't sometimes just pick. I also just sometimes pick good cards when I play expeditions by watching TV or something. Then I'm not tryharding. But if you really want to maximize your win rate and get the best deck possible, it's definitely going to improve your deck quality by a little bit, some of percentage.
Yeah, I'm still really big on first and second pick. I think about this ones the most because they are champions pick and they're influenced by my drafts the most. But in certain cards later on, I don't think a lot about.
Arthur, what do you think about buckets? How do you treat them in your drafts?
So I actually don't look at them very much at all. I'm very much a independent, raw, power value drafter. So I draft good cards a lot of the time. Because I think the buckets, how they're being rated, is still based on the individual cards. We say a bucket is good because it has majority good cards, and we say a bucket is bad because it has majority bad cards. So I think it's still the cards that matter more than the archetypes. And I think with what Myzrael was saying, with regards to picking up Confront, just so that he can end up in Shyvana buckets, those are the kind of sacrifices that I don't really want to be making. It is essentially an investment, because what you're sacrificing is currently you're sacrificing good cards because you're picking up currently bad cards, but you're hoping that you'll get paid off later on with better cards in the future. And for me, I'm very risk averse, so I take a very conservative approach, which means that I just want good cards consistently in all my decks, and I don't want to pick any bad cards, because the downside risk is that even if I pick up Confront so that I can end up in Shyvana buckets, what happens if I get paid off by being offered more Confronts? Then I'm not getting paid off at all, and I want to reduce that risk as much as possible, so that even if I end up in a good bucket, I don't just get offered bad cards, which I don't want. That's why I'm willing to take good cards from good buckets, good cards from bad buckets. If my deck is just full of good cards, then I'm quite happy with it. Whereas I don't really want to be sacrificing something that I know for certain for some unknown thing in the future. As the saying goes, a bird in hand is better than two in the bush, and that's the principle that I draft by.
And yeah, I think it's pretty good to have us all here because we have all a little bit of different approach to this. And I definitely don't always go for the good buckets. I don't always force this, and it always depends on the pick. If the pick is pretty close, then I might go for the one that's the better bucket. If you have an insane bomb like the Howling Abyss, then I tend to throw all the bucket knowledge out of the window and just pick the good card. So it's always a little bit of a juggling act between investment in the future and just picking the good cards immediately.
I also found this draft on Lord Guardian, and it was actually Confront and Ranger's Dissolve. Two cards that I picked on 3.
Okay. Fist of the Dragon bucket, because it's the only one that has Ranger's Resolve from Shivana. That's how well I know the different buckets. But yeah, we also had a pretty interesting situation on pick 2 that we want to talk about. And this was actually this pack. It was posted in one of the Discords. And it was very interesting because, of course, the real option for the people with hearts would be to go embrace Monoshorima. But it would, of course, be win-rate-wise a very bad option. And we had the choice between the Pantheon and Heimerdinger. And I was, despite the buckets, still going to go for the Pantheon because it just had the better individual cards, and I also like Pantheon more than Heimerdinger. And this would be the case where I don't go for the separate buckets and future picks, but would just pick the good cards, even though Shield Wall is not really a card I want. Blind Mystic is really, really good in my experience. Pantheon is also stronger than Heimerdinger from what I've played with him. So I recommended Pantheon, but Myzrael was of another opinion. What did you want to pick?
In a vacuum, of course, Pantheon bucket is stronger here. Pantheon himself is a bigger bomb and do more of a splash during the game. I also really like Blinded Mystic. I also don't think Shield's Vault is too bad of a card, so all of those 3 looks okay to me. But then we have Grand Moments Heimerdinger on one. And since I often check barcode data win rate, try to look for observation and stuff, I can see right now that meta is shifting a little bit, and that countering Pantheon is more popular right now. Trying to go for a good removal, for many good removal cards like Concerted Strikes, Sunburst, Vengeance is popular strategy, and Pantheon have this weakness that can be very easily exploited. And Pantheon's win rate is going down recently. And on the other hand, if you pick Heimerdinger, even though he's a worst champion by himself, you're going to guarantee Demacia in your next pick. And since we have 13 buckets from Demacia, I think I checked the spreadsheet, it was 13. And
14, yes.
14. So since we have 14 Demacia buckets, then we have only one really bad bucket being Vaults of Crown Garen, and if we pick Heimerdinger on first, we are guaranteed to see Demacia bucket on second, and if we manage to not hit this one Garen bucket, 1 on 14, right? Then we have only 3 average choices being 4 average choices being 3 Fiora buckets and the Demacian Steel from Garen, and then we have all other buckets, all other 9. I think other 9 is from the top 6 champions from Balco data, since Demacia is so good right now that in top 6 champions in Balco data right now we have all of the 5 Lucian, Lux, Jarvan, Shyvana, and Queen. Since hitting any of this champion means that your deck is one of the is really good, is very powerful, and it's above 60% chance to hit one of these champions. And even if you don't, you probably just hit one of the above average buckets from either Garen or Fiora. The only disaster one is 3 region Garen, because you're guaranteed Shadow Ice landmark, so you have to go to 3 regions with lots of Halia, and this is the only disaster choice. This is why I decided to suggest Heimerdinger. I have experience from doing that. I did a draft this week when I picked Heimerdinger on 1 and Shyvana on 2, and I traded away all 3 Heimerdinger cards, all 3 pre-tower cards that I had. Golden Crash bot before even starting first game, Heimerdinger after second pick, after second win, and then right before final boss, I traded away Mystic Shot, even though I probably shouldn't, because I had like 3 Strafing Strikes and 2 single combat. I traded away Mystic Shot for another Strafing Strike, just because I wanted to beat Mono Demacia after picking 3 other cards. I still managed to get to 7 with this deck, and I think this is actually a really valid strategy to force Demacia on second pick, especially if I don't know if the champion is good and the bucket that champion in it is good, especially because then since you be grant moments right now, we are going to have grant moments shown all the time later. Because we shape these buckets. We also have examples of champions that have bad buckets with themselves and can guarantee you Demacia, like Shen. And with the Shen case, Shen have bucket with Fiora, and this bucket is pretty weak. I think it's Shield's Wall. It's called it's Shield Wall. This bucket is pretty weak, and we don't want to have it shown all the time. So Shen is much worse on the pick because you have one worse bucket all the time. With Heimerdinger, there's no such a problem because Grand Moments is very good, maybe the best bucket in the game right now. And you pick your concerted strikes and feel good about facing any Pantheon in the future.
Okay, first of all, one thing we should mention is if your bucket, like Grand Moments, has a pairing like Demacia, then you will be guaranteed to see this second pairing as well in the second pick. So here, like Myzrael said, if you pick up the Pantheon, it would be guaranteed. The Heimerdinger would be guaranteed to see Demacia in the next pick. That's the fundamental thing. And yeah, interesting points you brought up. I'm interested that you don't like Shield Wall despite having a Screeching Dragon, but let's first hear what Arthur would have done in this pick, I would say.
So I get the reasoning behind picking the middle pack here so that you can go into Demacia. I think the pick is close between the left pack and the middle pack, and I thought I was the biggest fan of Demacia. I even have the board when I first joined the game, but I don't like it enough to pick my first champion just so that I can force my second champion pick to be Demacia. I think it's close between the 2 packs. Personally, I would go for the left pack, and the reason for that is because I like Pantheon and I like Blinded Mystic, but I don't like Shield Vault. Whereas in the middle pack, I like Heimerdinger, but I don't like Production Surge nor Golden Crush Bot. And I take a very kind of average approach, which is if we add up all of the ratings for each of the 3 cards across the 2 packs, the numbers just look better for me on the left pack. So therefore, I would pick the left pack. But I think the difference is actually fairly minimal between the 2 of them. The reason why I don't want to go into the middle pack just so that let's say I think it's weaker, which I think Myzrael also thinks the middle pack is weaker, but he is essentially sacrificing that so that he could get future expected good picks from Demacia. The reason why I don't want to be making that sacrifice is because as strong as Demacia is, there are still some duds, there are still some bad cards. We talked about Confront, Vanguard Lookout, potentially Ranger's Resolve, various cards that aren't very good in Demacia. And if my payoff is to get Demacia, but then I get those bad cards from Demacia, I wouldn't think that's much of a payoff, and I wouldn't want to go into Demacia for those bad Demacia cards. Also, I don't think the imbalance in Runeterra Expeditions is so much to the extent that I would pick Demacia, essentially bad Demacia cards over good cards from other regions which are worse. So looking at the Lore Guardian data, we see the Demacia win rate overall being 63%, but Bandle City is at 62% and Noxus is at 61%. So I think the difference is actually fairly minimal. I will say Demacia is the strongest, but I definitely think there are bad Demacia decks and better Bandle City or Noxus decks, even Bilgewater decks, and it's quite remarkable recently that I actually lost to a Mono Shurima deck, which is a region that normally isn't seen to be very strong right now. So as much as I like Demacia, and I do agree it's the strongest strongest region in Expeditions, I don't think the premium, the imbalance is so much that I would pick it above all else. And there are definitely picks in my second pack that I would pick over an average Demacia pack. Yeah, generally from Bandle City or from Noxus.
I agree that the imbalance is not that great, but Myzrael, you can respond first.
Yeah, but over 60% chance to have one of the top champions is very high, I would say. If I'm gonna be shown average Demacia pack like Fiora or something, I will probably look for something else on second pick. That's for sure if it's a good champion. But if no, if this is one of the big five, as I say, it's therefore one of them with Heimerdinger. Even if it would be LeBlanc, which is fifth right now, or Riven, which is 7, it would be always Demacia. Demacia is is very strong in every statistic that you can see, like this champions to the top. Lord Guardian is also the best, even though win rate is a little inflated. Mono Demacia decks are over 60% win rate, according to our last Balco discussion about regions and if it's better to go mono or not mono in terms of regions. So I think Demacia is way better than the others. It's much more of a difference that stats say, and of course, over average Demacia, I would definitely pick one of the other champs, one of the other good champs like LeBlanc or Sivir, but it's not. It's on average, it's not gonna be a bad Demacia champion, but it's over 60% chance to see one of the big five.
Okay, I have another question for Myzrael. You said before you wanted these Demacia buckets. Let's say you start with a Shyvana. Would you then go into one of the intended buckets? Like say, if you have the Shyvana and Ionia, will you then go into Ionia, or will you just stay in the mono bucket? Or here, Malefic Descent Shyvana, will you then just, if you have the option between going into Shadow Isles or going into different regions, would you rather have this Malefic Descent be mono Demacia or different regions?
It depends on the other choice. I would rate Viego lower if I have, because I don't want Shadow Eyes from Malefic Descent bucket, since they're gonna be shown during the whole draft, and I don't want this. But if the other choices would be like Irelia and Pike, I would definitely go Viego, right? So,
Yeah, of course.
even though, yeah.
But
So,
that's like
so therefore Viego would be a little lower ranked by me in this case, but I would prefer not, and I would prefer not to be in Shadow Eyes with Malefic Descent.
And that's a little bit my point, because if I draft Lux, I don't want to be in PNC, so that my Grand Moments bucket is only Demacia. And even the Demacia bucket has a little bit of bad cards. Purify is not that good, Stony Suppressor is not that good, Redoubled Veiler is not that good. And in my opinion, this bucket gets heavily carried, but pretty much carried by Lux. And Demacia being good in general, I don't actually think this Demacia side is that strong.
It's carried by Concerted Strike, I would say.
Like Concerted Strike is like in 7 or 8 different buckets.
it's still it's only 5 common cards in this bucket. So considered strikes shows a lot more often. I have like 5, 6, 7 considered strikes when I play Lux.
But is that even that good? Like, isn't that too many?
Yes, yes.
Like I want 2 or 3 concerted strikes. How many concerted strikes do you like, Arthur?
I do think there is a max, and I think it's probably stronger in the Dragon Demacia decks than it is in Grand Moments, because within Grand Moments, even though it counts as a spell and it's a pretty expensive one, you might not have the creatures that benefit from using Concerted Strike the most. So I probably would like, maybe 2 or 3 as well.
Okay. And if you look at the PNC side, I see a bunch of, like, it's a little bit high rolly. You have the best PNC cards, Mystic Shot, Gotcha, Aftershock, and then you have the worst PNC cards, basically, almost. Golden Crushbot, Used Cask Salesman, Hextech Transmogulator, Heimerdinger. So it would be a little bit high rolly, and I wouldn't just call this the best bucket in the game. It's might be the best bucket win rate wise, but that's probably because of Lux. And if you look at the bucket over here with the direct win rates, there's it, Grand Moments, and we can see the left side is insanely high because Lux is insanely good, and like obviously Sonic Suppressor is, in my opinion, just that high because Lux is that high. Sonic Suppressor is only living in this bucket. Doesn't say that Sonic Suppressor is an insane card by any means. But if you look at the Heimerdinger side, it's actually way lower from a win rate.
So the concept we're trying to demonstrate here is dilution. Essentially, if you start off with Demacia Lux Grand Moments and you don't pick up Piltover and Zon with Heimerdinger, the game will only show you Grand Moments bucket with Demacia in it, which means that if you see that 1 there in cell, it's at OK4, CK4, it says that it's essentially the kind of highest rated bucket, well, regional bucket across all of them, based on the cards that are in there. Whereas for the PNZ half, it's number 62, which is relatively middling. By diluting your Grand Moments Demacia picks with the Piltover and Zon ones, you're actually more likely to make the offerings worse. And that's what we're trying to demonstrate.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And to clarify, if I see Heimerdinger on, I want to go into Demacia to have Grand Moments both. But if I pick Lux on one, I don't want to go into PNZ to just keep this high Demacia, bucket, this high level Demacia bucket.
Yeah. And my point is, if you mix 1 and 62 together, you are getting around 30 or something, and it's not that
If you
strong
mix
anymore.
50 and 58, you get 54, which is top 10 in expeditions. I mean, champion-wise, right?
Yeah, but yeah, okay, champion-wise, okay. So another scenario I couldn't really explain that well is we can just like hypothetically make this draft go, make this like smaller. If we continue this draft a little bit, and let's say first pick we go for the Heimerdinger. First pick Heimer. Then let's say in the second pick you then get your dream pick, your Dragon Shyvana or something. Let's say Malefic Descent Shyvana. And then if you pick those 2 up, then you will have 3 options. First of all, the Grand Moments. And then say we have some mediocre cards in this one. The Unlicensed Innovation and a Gotcha. Then we have in the middle one Malefic Descent and like good card or mediocre cards as well. No Ruined Dragon Guard and Single Combat, say is a little bit better. And then we have a random bucket, random X. So what would you go for here? Like let's say the random bucket is like worse than the other 2. It's like a random, like, I don't know, Time Lords with whatever PNC cards.
Good cards, always. You have Malefic Descent, you have Ring Dragon Guard, and what do you need? This is your pick always. I don't think we ever choose any other thing, right?
Yeah, but because you said you wanted to force Grand Moments to force Lux to show up, so you would be okay with just going into Malefic Descent and
Yes.
abandoning the idea of forcing
Yes.
Lux to show up.
The idea of forcing Grand Moments is only valid if if you hit like Fiora or Garen, like wars stuff. If you hit Malefic Descent, I'm very happy to play Shivana.
Okay.
I don't have to force Lux.
So let's say we make this a little bit worse, and
So hold on. As I understand it, if you picked Heimer, so first and second, in future Grand Moments offerings, they should be able to show you both Grand Moments that is from PNZ and Grand Moments from Demacia. Isn't
yes,
that
exactly. That was just an example. You could also replace the gotcha with like a Stony Suppressor or something.
right? Okay.
Let's say we make a worse Dragon Bucket. I don't know, another bad, like let's say Dragon Chow. Would you still go for Malefic Descent? Or probably this example doesn't really work out.
The example doesn't really work out. Malefic Descent is just still independently better, so
Okay.
you have to
So-
pick like double Mystic Shot in Grand Moments to make
Yeah,
the
okay.
case.
Then let's say you had, like you don't get this perfect
So-
Shyvana. Let's say we get like a Fiora pick 2 or something. Fiora pick 2, and then we have a bad, I don't know, suit up with standalone and whatever. Y, Z. So then you would go for Grand Moments, right?
If third bucket is also bad, probably yes.
Yes, say third bucket is Time Lord or something,
Mhm.
and it actually still works what I wanted to showcase with the other one that I want. So let's say we pick Malefic Descent, and like let's go back to, but because I actually wanted to showcase something. If you pick Malefic Descent here, it will most likely show you a Shadow Isles pick. Shadow Isles, because you said I want to be Malefic Descent. Malefic Descent is paired with Shadow Isles, so you will very often in pick 4 see a Shadow Isles pack. And what I fear is we have Shadow Isles, and then we have double PNC and PNC as options. It rarely happens, but it has happened to me before. And then you can't really stay in Demacia anymore. That would be a little bit unfortunate. And then you would have a weird draft. I had like one draft that was super weird suddenly because of this pick 4 random third region pick.
Isn't it a guarantee? No. Oh wait, this can happen when you pick Demacia on?
As far as I understand it, these two are random. It can be Demacia, it can be PNC, and you
Even
are.
if you have like two Demacia picks before, like champion and third pick.
Yes, well, it can happen. Like I said, seen it before.
Okay.
And that would be like an unfortunate
Sure,
scenario.
I didn't see this at all. I always just when I do this and force Demacia on second pick, I always just have only Demacia picks all the way. I had two drafts in a week like that with Kalista and Heimerdinger, and it always was exactly the same. I end up with three cards from Shadow Eyes or PNZ and all of the rest Demacia. In first run, I just traded away Shadow Eyes cards, leaving up the deck that have 35 Demacia cards and Kalista in it.
Okay. This was going a little bit far, but I just wanted to showcase this scenario that I found very interesting. That's happened to me. If you like want to watch this scenario happen, it is in the Aphelios draft where I got two bad buckets and a Ionia pack and was sad about my life. But yeah. So, anything else you want to add to this discussion?
Nothing more from me.
I'm gonna only say that this is some advanced drafting, and if you if you don't have really big knowledge about the game, you probably should just go for Pantheon here, trying to go for the best cards. But when you start going more expeditions runs, and when you start understanding this stuff better, this is I believe this is just much better choice Heimerdinger, and it's not close for me.
Interesting, because like 2 months ago you still said you always look for the best cards and don't care about the buckets, and now you go more for the forcing Demacia path.
That's true. I played a few runs. I saw that Demacia is the easiest way to get 7 wins, and I remember that. I'm pretty simple about it.
Yeah. By the way, force a Demacia pack to show up then it's the second pick, because if you pick up Heimerdinger and then pick Grand Moments again, it will be very likely, like 90%, to show you Demacia in your fourth pick, in your wild pick. Would you still go for that?
I would not go for that. I would not go for that. I think 3 regions is significantly worse than 2 regions, and I don't want to jump into 3 regions if I have option to choose between similar power champions. If I would need to pick Heimerdinger because it's clearly the best, I would do that, and I would probably jump to Demacia on a fourth pick. But but I would not try to force this. I would not try to manipulate draft to give me Demacia. If pick Heimerdinger to give me Demacia on second pick.
Okay. So in the end, we want to do a full draft together and just see what we would go for with these different options. This is just the one we showed you before. And we have the Shroom and Boom, which is a mono-region bucket, so only PNC. And if you pick up Mega Cake, we will see Noxus in our second pick. If you pick up Relic Trackers, we will see Shurima as our second pick. So, Arthur, do you want to start? Because you will probably discuss the individual power level of cards, so then we can showcase the cards.
Sure. So the left pack, I like quite a lot, and Brothers Bond is pretty decent as well. The middle pack I don't like very much. I think Gangplank, especially after his nerf, is no longer very good. Bilgewater is not very good. Oh, Noxus is pretty good. As you saw, possibly the third best region. The Dreadway is actually pretty decent if you can actually get him out and pair him up with Gangplank. Expensive, but I don't like Mystifying Magician very much. So I think the middle pack is probably the weakest. With regards to the right pack, I like Teemo and I like Thermogenic Beam and I like Get Excited. But between the left pack and the right pack, I think I prefer the left to kind of have a strong board presence and get my advantage through combat, which Riven and Noxus does better than Teemo and PNZ. So that's the reason why I would pick.
It's really hard to add anything to that. I totally agree with Arthur. He said, I would still only point out that Riven is just one of the best champions in expeditions. So picking Riven is normally a good idea, and this is clearly like we have really good Riven. You have above average Teemo, and you have bad Gangplank. So I think the choice is very clear. I also really like Riven. I also really like Willing Death. Even though this is one of the better packs with Teemo, because I like Get Excited and I really like Thermogenic Beam. I think Thermogenic Beam is a very strong card, but it's still the difference between power level of the champions for still too much, too big, and I'm not gonna consider Teemo even with great cards here. It's Riven.
Interesting, because for me it would be almost reverse order. Like, I'm not trolling, but I would actually consider the Gangplank the strongest here if I would draft for 7 wins, because we always see Noxus in second pick, so we can just build a good Noxus deck, and Dreadway is just such an insane card with Noxus. I wouldn't want to stay in Gangplank, but I think I can find a Noxus pack with similar power level to Riven in the second pick, and would just pick up the insane bomb here. I also personally prefer Teemo over Riven, because Riven's game plan is very classic, attacking and going into combat, and I personally face a lot of Ash decks currently, so I would try to avoid cards like Whirling Death and instead go for the more uninteractive Mushroom game plan. For me, it would be Gangplank, Teemo, and Riven here from this pick order. But I can definitely see where you're coming from, and individually, and statistically, Riven is the strongest choice.
I find it interesting that you say you want to pick the middle pack so that you can get into Noxus, because Mega Keg is essentially a Buildwater and Noxus pack. Why not just pick Relic Trackers, which is Noxus itself, and thereby guaranteeing Noxus?
Because the Dreadway is insane, and these are kind of mediocre cards. Like, Willing Death lives in 10 different buckets. You will basically always see it if you draft Noxus. Brothers Bond is a card I don't really like that much, and Riven is good. I don't consider Riven as good as the Dreadway.
Dreadway dies to Vengeance, they have 2 mana if I play against. So I don't know what you are talking
Well,
about.
if they are
Dreadway.
playing,
It's not gonna win you the game.
have you played with the card?
Yes, it's 8 mana. I played a lot against this card in Path of Champions, so I can say, but as Arthur pointed out nicely, this is what Noxus champions. Why don't just pick Noxus and don't try to go with Gangplank? I seriously thought you're gonna just say Teemo because Teemo is great, and you always keep saying this, but
Teemo is
I'm
great.
mega surprised.
Yes.
Even though I value Mystified Magician probably more off because I really like this card and I think it's strong, even though it's not close. Gangplank is just very bad.
I
Yeah.
think I think our different valuation of these packs is largely down to our different valuations of the cards.
Yes.
I've gone into the expeditions ratings that we went through last week with the spreadsheet, and I've noticed quite drastic different valuations of these cards. For example, the Dreadway, Conan rates as a 9 and Myzrael rates as a 4. So that's probably the reason why he likes Mega Care quite a lot. Whereas with regards to Brothers Bond, I like it at 7, but both Conan and Myzrael like it at 4. Is that Conan has rated, in fact, we all agree that Gangplank is pretty bad with a rating of 4. But I guess you just like the Dreadway enough that you think he will carry Gangplank.
Yeah.
And this is despite you rating Riven as an 8, which is pretty consistent with what we have. You just think Dreadway plus Gangplank is better than Riven plus, I guess, Welling that you think you can get later.
Yes, and what Myzrael misses is that the Dreadway draws me a Gangplank. So even if I Vengeance it, then I can still maybe deal some burst damage or fast speed damage. And if they play a slow control Vengeance deck, I will just overrun them with my Noxus curve. Like, I play a typical Noxus curve, 2-drop, 3, like Glory Seeker, and 5-4, and then I just die if they Vengeance my 5-1, for example. So
I mean, if you play 8 mana card that doesn't win you the game, you're probably not going
but this does win me the game.
to win the game. Huge investment. If you play how often it doesn't win you the game.
Doubles
So
all your
consist-
allies' power. It's basically a Cytheria. It also works in spells.
but it dies to removal and stuff. It can be answered easily by Concerted Strike or something that is very popular in this meta.
Riven
Going
can be
for
too.
one card, yes, but even it costs 3 mana and gonna generate you Blade also. So it's I guess Dreadway is going to draw you Gangplank if you don't have already one. But in the meta that there is a lot of powerful remove big bomb like Pantheons, like Shivanas, and people just pick this great removal. Trying to go with one strong card that costs a lot doesn't seem to me like a good strategy.
Okay. Let's, for the sake of continuing, let's pick Relic Trackers. This will guarantee us to see a Shurima pick next pick.
The other thing, actually, I do want to add. Yes, we understand that with Relic Trackers, we will guarantee seeing a Shurima pack in the second pick. And with Mega Keg, we are guaranteed to see a Noxus one in the second pick. But it's still one of 3 picks. And if we get a bad Noxus offering or we get a bad Shurima offering, we can just pick the other 2. I don't really So I'm not a huge fan of Shurima, and I prefer Noxus over it. But if I don't get the Shurima pack that I want in my second, I'm just not going to pick it. Whereas by choosing Mega Keg and getting Noxus, I don't want to end up with a weak. If I end up with a weak Noxus pack, I would feel like I haven't really gotten paid off in that respect, and I'll still end up having to pick the other two, one of the other two packs anyway. So just because I'm picking my first one and guaranteeing my second pack, that is not necessarily what I'm going to pick. It's the left one, but quite often I just still pick middle or right with regards to the second pick.
Yeah, I can see that, but I would say there's only 2 bad Noxus buckets in the Swain ones. The rest of the Noxus buckets are all above average. There's not really another bad one. Even if I pick up Swain, I can just make it work with Dreadway and doubling and Mega Kex. I can do like a meme deck.
Isn't like Katarina bad also?
No, Katarina is pretty good, I would say. Right? Look at
No, low sample size percent also.
the Katarina as champion is a little bad, but her bucket is pretty strong.
So you were talking about Noxus generally being pretty good. I would have thought Riven and Relic Tracker's Noxus is pretty good, and Gangplank and Mega Keg in general being pretty bad. So I just wouldn't want to be picking up that Bilgewater, Gangplank, Mega Keg in general.
I would say Mega
Exactly,
Keg is.
and if you can choose between a random Noxus and good Noxus plus a random Noxus plus Gangplank and a good Noxus plus something else that you have very big likelihood to not to hit something better. It's therefore worth picking here.
Okay, let's go for the Riven though, and let's just see where this ends up. So we will see Shurima, and here we have our Shurima bucket and 2 random buckets, Shadow Isles and the Foxy Ninjas cannon. So maybe Arthur, you want to start again, and I will write down which buckets we have picked up so far.
Okay, sure. So with the left bucket, we've got Azir, who's been nerfed and I don't think is very good anymore. Spiritfire, which is pretty good, and I like, and Soothsayer is not very good. These are my opinions. With regards to the middle pack, I like Senna and I like Solari Sentinel, and I think Spirit Leech is playable. I don't think it's amazing or anything, but I think it's decent. And lastly, with Foxy Ninjas, we see Kennen, which I think is passable as a champion. It's nothing great. Gus Monk, I think, is decent, but I don't like Thunderfist at all. So between the three, I would pick the middle pack. I like Senna and Solari Sentinel. I think Spirit. And I say just because I picked Riven and Relic Trackers, guaranteeing Shurima as my left pick. If I get offered a bad Shurima pack as my left pick in my second pick, I'm just not going to go for it. I'm going to go for something better, which I think is the middle Shadow Isle Senna pack. So therefore, I haven't given anything up because I think Riven's pack is still stronger than the Gangplank pack. And I've just yeah, and there, even though I didn't get paid off with regards to a strong Shurima pack, I didn't give anything up by sacrificing the Riven either. So I would go for the middle pick here.
Maybe one quick thing to the sacrificing, like seeing a bad Shurima pick is way more, bad Shurima bucket is way more likely than seeing a bad Noxus bucket, in my opinion. Because in my opinion, there are like 3 good Shurima buckets and the rest are all bad. And this is why Shurima as a region is kind of bad because of buckets. So it's a little bit, pick the good pack now and see the bad pack, or pick the bad pack now and see potentially a good pick.
Yeah, but there is a big difference between having a bad Bilgewater bucket already and one of the best Noxus buckets. The difference is huge, right? So I don't know how do we compare this. It's like one of the best versus one of the worst.
Well, I would say good cards in a bad bucket are still, like that's what Arthur said in the beginning. If the cards are good enough, but you don't see Dreadway as a 9, but if you would see it as a 9, you might make more
Yeah,
sense.
Still
to you.
better.
I think the difference comes down to different valuations of Dreadway. And yeah, I agree with Myzrael here in that I think if we pick up Senna here, our first 6 starting cards are going to be stronger than if we picked the Mega Keg pack, the middle pack, in the first pick, and then even if we end up with the strongest Noxus ones.
Dreadway Darkness is pretty
Don't
sick.
water that much.
Dreadway Darkness would be pretty sick, but
Yeah.
not really.
For me here, it's pretty interesting because I think Azir is unplayable here, having too much of a synergy and being just bad. We don't want to pick him, even though Spiritfire is pretty good. But it doesn't change Azir to the point that we can even consider this. And then we have interesting choice between Senna and Cannon. Even though Senna is just significantly stronger than Cannon, the difference is really big. But I really don't like pairing of Shadow Eyes and Noxus, and this is why I think this choice is quite close. And this is why I decided to. I thought about it a little, but then I decided that the difference is too big to potentially go into Cannon, even though Bundle City and Noxus have a lot of synergy, and this could be powerful, build a strong initiative focus deck, but the champions build around without a good synergies. Sana and Riven are both very strong champions and can provide very strong decks. That I think even the fact that they don't have a lot of synergy together is nullified by just raw power level. So like Arthur, I would go middle here and I would pick Senna. Also, kind of also because I really like Senna. And I really like darkness. So I wouldn't discuss power level. I would just snap pick Senna because.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm surprised that it was close to Myzrael. I always imagine Myzrael having like a big poster in his bedroom with Senna and Darkness because he's such a big fan of it.
I like Vigar more to go dark, so it's also important to note.
Okay, and for me it would also not be close. Like Cannon is now playable. The trade bug has been fixed as far as we've seen, but he will still not be as good. And I would also always easily go Senna here. Not much to add. So if we all agree on Senna, let's just go for it, right? Okay, and then we have again showing up Darkness Rising and Relic Trackers, and now a random bucket over here. And if we would go for Darkness Rising, we would be very likely to see a Battle City pack out of our pick 4. If we go for Relic Trackers, we would very likely to see a Shurima pack in our pick 4. If we go for Black Mists, it's just a little bit random because it doesn't even have a pairing. So, Arthur, what would you go here?
So I think I would probably go for the middle pack here. I think Weapon Hilt is okay, and I like Whirling Death. At this point, this is a little more spells than I would like, which means in the rest of the picks, I would like to pick more units. But with regards to the left and right packs, I don't like Stalking Shadows at all in Expeditions, and I think Withering Whale is only okay. And on the right one, I don't really like Wraithcaller very much. I also think that's only okay. So I would personally go for the middle pack and start valuing units a bit more highly in the rest of the draft, because I don't want to end up with kind of a 1-to-1 ratio with regards to units of spells. I generally like it at maybe a 2-to-1 ratio or even more in terms of units, because I like playing to the board, and I don't like kind of floating mana into spell mana, because I think that's inefficient.
I also would have gone middle. I would not try to put more picking units for now. I think it's too early in the draft. That I would just keep hitting raw power stuff. I would, if I have more spells in the like three more picks, I would probably just start thinking about this. But it's not for now. Even though I kind of don't like Weapon Hilt, it's not my favorite card. Therefore, I really like Willing Death, and I can get behind picking that card very often. I think a left pick is not bad, but I think our main game plan should be more initiative focused and purely reactive card in Withering Veil. Even though it's not bad normally, it's not gonna be great here. And Stalking Shadows is not a great card if you don't have twisted catalyzers, because this is the best card to pick with Stalking Shadows in Darkness. And it doesn't look like we're gonna have some, so I would not pick left here. It's middle.
Interesting. I would probably go right with the Ravecaller and just stay in mono Shadow Isles, because I personally think the Mist Rave strategy is just one of the strongest ones you can go for in expeditions. So I think it's like Riven and Senna are pretty close, but Mist Raves and like the 5 Ravecaller draw is basically unbeatable if you get a good Mist Rave deck. I would probably go right. I also don't like Weapon Hilt and don't want too many Whirling Deaths. So probably it's also coming down to the evaluation of Ravecaller. I think, Arthur, you said you don't like Ravecaller, right?
Yeah, I don't like Wraithcaller very much.
Okay, that's also like comes down a little bit to evaluation. So I would go right here, but I can see middle. And because it's 2-1, let's go middle. And what that means is that we will very likely see a Shurima pick here, not 100%, but it's often happening. Not this time though. So Arthur, what do you think?
So on the left, we have 2 decent spells, Glimpse Beyond and Unspeakable Horror. And I think they're decent. In the middle, I don't like Fading Memories at all, and I don't really want too many more Spirit Leeches. And on the right, I think the Precious Pet and the Noxian Feather are both okay. I would, in terms of power level, I would probably like, but as I said, I still dislike the fact that I have so many spells at the moment. But it is still early, and we still got time to pivot into more units. So in terms of pure power level, I probably would still pick the left pack here.
I would actually pick right pack here, since we are Noxus. I want my 1-drops, and Precious Pet is one that very often deals this 2 damage early on. And I like Noxian Fervor. I think this card is above average. Even though I think also that left bucket is stronger, but I think we're gonna go into archetype of more initiative focused strategy. I don't think cards like Unspeakable Horror are great in archetypes like that, and this is part of the reason why I want to go to the right. There's also a middle pack here that I don't think it's playable from this perspective. I really don't like Fading Memories. I think it's a Spirit Leech. It's therefore too early to pick second Spirit Leech here.
Yeah, I can agree on middle. Maybe from the bucket standpoint, Luminous Dusk has a lot of random stuff in it, like a Ravenous Butcher and Stalking Shadows, and just it's a big pile of random stuff. I don't really like this archetype. Arctophilia is the spider archetype, which actually are from color-wise. Like a theory of mine that if you have like 2 pairings, it will oftentimes show you this one, but it's not confirmed. And if you want to be initiative focused and aggressive, then Arachnophilia and the Spiders archetype is what we want to be seeing. So my favorite archetype to draft, because it has like clear weaknesses. If your opponent plays an Avalanche, you are just dead. But if we are on this path, I would also go right. Just pointing out that we would have seen another Black Mist, maybe, so we could have gone into the Mist Wave strategy. And I would have picked first, like in the last pick, Black Mist, I would pick Black Mist here as well. Now it's probably Arachnophilia. So since it's 2-1, let's go for the Spider pack.
Yeah, and this means no, it's not correct.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Like, my internet is a little bit bad, I think.
Pick 5 is a synergy pick. It
Yes.
alternates between wild and synergy.
Exactly. So our next pick will show us Relic Trackers, Darkness Rising, and Arachnophilia. That's like guaranteed. So let's see here. Relic Trackers, Darkness Rising, Arachnophilia. And Arthur, you can start again.
I think these are all fairly close. I like Rune Weaver, and I think Weapon Hilt is okay. I don't like Stalking Shadows, but I like Ixtali Sentinel a lot. And I think Glimpse Beyond and Vile Feast are fairly decent as well. Given that what we have, I don't mind it too much here. But I think all of these are possible. If you want to go for more initiative focus, then having that Rune Weaver is probably better. So I would probably go for the left one. Otherwise, I think the right pick is also decent. I think it's close. As I said, the middle one, I love Ixtali Sentinel, but I don't really want to pick it because I don't like the Stalking Shadows. So with what we have at the moment, I would probably go left here.
I would also go left. The same reason as Arthur explained. I think right pick is stronger here. I like Glimpse Beyond more and Vile Fist more. I don't like Weapon Hilt. Probably this is part of the reason. But I think we want to be initiative focused, and we want the Rune Weavers, and we want and we want more initiative cards. I also really like Ixali, but both archetype thing and Stalking Shadows makes this pick not really great. If you are initiative focused Noxus, I think versus other initiative focused decks, Exile Sentinel is not gonna often be very impactful because we're gonna either be too behind with it or gonna win the game. I think initiative focused Noxus Exile Sentinel is not that great. I value it more in the other aggressive strategies just to counter Noxus exactly.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful. Like, I recently changed it from 7 to 9, and I just don't like Weapon Hilt at all, especially not the second one. So I would be tempted to actually go for middle, but I can see if you want to be aggressive. Generally, I'm not that aggressive, so I'm more of a value player and would be like, ooh, value, Bloody Sentinel, and would still try to switch over to Darkness because I like it more than Spiders. But if you want to be aggressive focused and initiative focused, then I like left as well. Let's go left. And then I would still guess that because we pick up Relic Trackers twice, now we would, there's a high likelihood of seeing Shurima pack here, but not guaranteed. We did now is we made Relic Trackers our main bucket, so it will always show up in synergy picks, and the rest is a little bit random. Let's see if it shows us Shurima here. Yes, like I said, Shurima, Sand and Ashes, and the Death's Door. We will also go for our fourth +2/+0 effect with a third Whirling Death. Do you think?
Yeah, I'm not too high on Brother Spawn, especially not the second one with 2 Weapon Hilt. And I like Welling Death, but we already have 2, so I start putting discounts on those. On the other hand, I think the Either Fiend is pretty decent. Whether or not we have small creatures, the effect is just pretty strong regardless. And Vengeance, especially after the recent buff, I like a lot. So I like the middle pack a lot. And on the right pack, I don't like the Emperor's Dace anymore. Never since Azir and Aurelia got nerfed. And then Sandcrafter is fairly passable as well. And I don't want to be going into Shurima right now, because I feel like it will kind of dilute. It will make the overall deck worse. It's not something like Demacia that might make the overall deck better. So I quite like the middle pack here for the Ether Fiend and Vengeance, and I don't mind mixing up kind of Noxus and Shadow Isles. I think they both work fine. Riven and Senon work fine as a mid-range deck, and as long as I can have the board in a mid game, the Shadow Isles cards, the late game cards like Ether Fiend and Vengeance can clean up in the end game, and I think that's fine. So I would go for the middle pack here.
About my choice, I would never pick right here. 3 regions, going to 3 regions is not that I'm looking, except maybe if this is like very strong region when I have 2 bad ones and not a plan really, but definitely not in this case. So we have choice between left and right, and we don't want another buff, another combat trick in Brothers Bond. So even though Willing Death is pretty strong, but we have middle peak and it's not close for me. I think Vengeance, we have Vengeance meta, so Vengeance is very strong right now, and picking Vengeance is always a good idea. So I want to have Vengeance in my deck. The other thing is also, I also rate this card pretty powerful. This effect is good. Strong. So I think I would have go Death Star here and middle.
So as a follow-up question, do you like Ether Fiend more than Ixali Sentinel then? Or is it just the same?
It depends probably on a level of synergy. I would say if I have like 2 hapless aristocrats, I probably like Ether Fiend more. If I have 1 twisted catalyzer, I probably like Ixali Sentinel more. I think this is more synergy dependent.
Interesting. I don't really like this card, but I also like Vengeance, so we are all on the same boat here with middle. Same arguments for left and right as was said before. So now we have another Death Store, and now we are at our 6th pick, so we can't see any other regions anymore. We are now locked in at Noxus and Shadow Isles. And my prediction is we always see Relic Trackers here, and then Darkness, and then Arachnophilia again. But you could also see Relic Trackers, Darkness, and Death Store. Okay, it just says, okay, you don't want Darkness.
No darkness.
Gives up on Darkness, shows us the other 3. But still, it's always compromised of what we have picked before: Relic Trackers, Death Store, and Arachnophilia. Interesting. Like, I don't know the exact in-depth how it works when it gives up on archetypes. Sometimes it really clings on your 2nd pick. Sometimes it just says, okay, you don't want Darkness, go away. There's like internal factors.
Maybe it's gonna show us. Maybe it's gonna show us random buckets between the 3 that we have 1 pick.
That might also be possible. I don't really know.
I would expect that's the case. Where it's equal, it would just roll a dice basically.
Okay. Arthur, you want to start again?
So for this pick, as I said, I would put a discount on Brothers Bond, since we already have quite a lot of buffs, power buffs. Runeweaver is decent. I don't think it kind of is that good of a pack here because we don't want more buffs. The middle pack I quite like. Burgeoning Sentinel is fine as a 1-drop, and it can get stronger. Even with cards like Whirling Death, it doesn't necessarily have to be Darkness or Vengeance or Piercing Darkness. And Piercing Darkness I do like quite a lot. And I don't mind, as I said, kind of moving a bit more slowly and turning into more of a mid-range deck that performs fine in the late game. It doesn't necessarily need to be more aggressive. And the last pack I think is not bad either. Hapless Aristocrat I think is decent, and Glimpse Beyond I think is decent as well. But personally, I think I like the middle pack.
I also like middle pack the most. I like Burgoshi Sentinel. I think it's a good 1-drop, and we want some 1-drops since you want to start our good from 1. Not Brothers Bond, as Arthur said, we not gonna pick this. I like Piercing Darkness that could be strong in Noxus Mirror. It's a good swing that kills. We can kill a unit and heal 5. It's a pretty good swing in the mirror. So this could be useful, especially since we going a little slower with our draft with Senna. And Piercing Darkness have great synergy with Senna. Senna on 5, Piercing Darkness on 6 as a fast spell is also pretty good. And even though right pick is right pick, I really like Happy is very annoying to beat for other aggro decks. And Glimpse Beyond is just pretty strong with its effect. I want this middle. I want good one drop and Piercing Darkness that would be that I think would be nice. Would covering some weaknesses of our deck.
I agree on that. Virgin Sentinel is just, in my opinion, one of the best one drops. Maybe Saga Seeker, but it's one of the one drops I considered giving a 10 or at least a 9. I don't know what I gave it exactly, but it's really, really strong. And I also like Peace in Darkness more and more. And yeah, I find it interesting that we move away from the relic trackers that we have picked up so much before. That's something I find with these Riven buckets, that you oftentimes see multiple of these plus 2 attack buffs, like we did in this draft. And that's why I wouldn't say Riven is. The Riven buckets are not insane, but they're definitely still good. And I'm like moving to Death Star because that's more of my archetype. The Vengeance meta. We pick Vengeances, we pick Piercing Darknesses, and we kill everything. That's like my favorite deck. Okay. Now we might. Okay, we see 3 random ones. Brutality is the other one. Noxus and Shadow Isles. And I think Descent and Noxian Might is just random here.
So on the left is kind of exactly what I'm looking for. More creatures. House Spider is pretty good. It's effectively 2 mana 3/3 across 2 bodies. And in terms of stats, you can't really get much better than that. Reckless Trifarian is okay, but also works pretty well in terms of our Noxus cards if we want to have some presence on the board. The fact that it can't block might not matter as much as we have cards like Piercing Darkness to gain our life in the end, and it works very well with Whirling Death. So I like the left pack a lot. The middle pack, Crawling Viperworm, I don't think is very good. Whether it strikes an ally or deals 3 to your Nexus, neither I think is very good in terms of its effect, because a 2 mana 3/2 Fury or a 2 mana 4/3 Fury at that point in the game usually do get taken out quite easily. Very rarely gets a 2 for 1. And then Chronicler of Ruin is very high synergy focused, and there isn't much in our deck that works well with it. And if it doesn't, if we don't have the synergies with it, a 4 mana 3/3 is very below par. So I don't like the middle pack very much. The right pack, I think Elixir of Wrath is okay. But again, I'm not looking for more spells here. I'd rather like to pick up more creatures. Legion Marauder, I think, is okay if you can get more of them, but we're already halfway through the pack and we haven't seen any yet. Um, and we haven't seen any strength in numbers, which is really what Legion Marauders work well together with. So here I think it's fairly easy left for me here.
Yeah, and for me, it's also fairly left. I think Trifarian is what we are looking for. A big body that can deal a lot of damage. And I really like House Spider. I am a fan of this card. I like all of the effects that summons 2 creatures on the board, because they can make a difference between in attack and in defense from attacks when there is more creatures on the board. On the other side, so I really like this card, and two bodies are for me on average better than one body. So I think House Spider is pretty strong. I don't like Ride for the same reasons Arthur don't like Ride spells, and it's too late for Legion Marauder. And about the middle, Chronicle of Ruin is just bad for our deck. We have literally only one Rune Weaver that works with it, I think, which is not great, and Solaris Sentinel, but it's not something that we're gonna. And then we have Crawling Viper Worm that is just for our deck. It's just worse than 2 mana 3/2 standard 2 mana 3/2 because it's either 2 mana 3/2 deal 3 to our face or kill a unit to be a 4/3, which is not gonna be worth it, since we gonna try to go probably a little wider and taller with this deck. So it's easy left.
Yeah, I have to agree. Easy left, nothing to add here. So let's just go for left. I fully agree with all the arguments made here. Not close at all. Maybe you suspected that Myzrael would like the 1-mana combat trick, but I can see why you don't like it here because we have so many combat tricks already.
Yeah, that's true. That's the main reason why we don't have any brothers or weapons here. I would be much closer to pick right here, right, but it still would be left.
So now in our synergy pick, we will see Relic Trackers, Death's Door, and potentially one of the random ones of the 3 ones we picked before. Relic Trackers, Death's Door, and Arachnophilia showing up again. And look at this Relic Trackers pick. Like every Relic Trackers pick we had so far had either Weapon Hilt or Brother Spawned. That's
Yeah,
insane.
and the Rule Weaver. It's always Rule Weaver
Yeah.
and one. Like, come on. This is quite interesting pick. I would go for double 1-drop from Arachnophilia. Precious Pet is okay, and Blade Squire is also a good 1-drop. One mana 2/1 that does something is okay. Even though we have really good pick on the middle also. I like Grasp of the Undying for the same reason I like Piercing Darkness. It's Health Swing, and it's fast, so it can work in combat. And Hapless Aristocrat is very annoying to deal with, and some kind of you can place Brothers Bond on, so that always sticks around. So this is something that you can consider. No, it's never left since we have too many weapon kills already. Two is for me too many. Too many, so I would not default left here. It's close between middle and right, and I would maybe our deck is slower than double 1-drop. It is close to me. It could be either right or I will probably end up on right since I like Initiative a little more, but it's very close.
Personally, I like the middle one more, because I think having 4 1-drops for our deck is probably not necessary, and I think that's too much. And I think Hapless Aristocrat is similar to the other 1-drops, but I'd rather at this point have a Grasp the Undying over another 1-drop. So I'm okay with slowing down a little bit and picking the middle pack. I think before that, what we said about being offered Runeweaver and Weapon Hilt a lot in the Relic Trackers archetype, and being frustrated by that. This is the exact reason why I don't want to try and go into archetypes, sacrifice things to go into good archetypes, because I think Relic Trackers is a pretty good archetype. It's currently 8th highest in terms of win rate across over 100 different regions within archetypes. But if we keep getting offered bad cards within good archetypes, it doesn't matter that we're in a good archetype. We're still going to pick other things. So that's the reason why we've kind of drifted away from Relic Trackers and moved more into Death's Door, which I think is probably a weaker archetype overall, but I prefer it just because it's given us better cards in a worse archetype. So I would go for the middle packet.
I actually like Death's Door more than Relic Trackers. Like the list that you have in is actually wrong. For example, if you look up Death's Door in the official spreadsheet, it doesn't have Burgeoning Sentinel in it, doesn't have Piercing Darkness in it. So these good cards that live in Death's Door now just don't show up, and that's why the win rate is a little bit lower. And of course, Thresh is not a very good champion. But from a bucket standpoint, I like Death's Door over Relic Trackers. And with this pick, I don't like left either. And it would be close for me between middle and right. And because it's close, I would actually bites in a little bit contradicting, but I would go for the right side here because Arachnophilia would be better for our deck, I think, because we really want some big late game epics. And Arachnophilia both has Captain Leadrose and Captain Farron, Commander Leadrose and Captain Farron. And I think our deck is mediocre, so I would go for a little bit of a high roll and try to get more into Arachnophilia over picking up these removal spells. But I would be really close. Just think that Arachnophilia would also allow us to have Elise as our third option. If we don't like the Riven, we don't like the Senna, we can just go for Elise, whereas Death Star would show us Thresh, and that's not really a champion I would ever want to pick up here. So from a bucket standpoint, I would go for the right side. But in general, like
We
Death Star more.
have relic trackers demos right now, so we're probably gonna have actions shown, right?
No, we have Noxus and Shadow Eyes, you can't go Shurima.
Okay.
That's just not how it works. It will always stay.
Yeah.
And because
Yeah, I just
Arachnophilia,
recently had something like that, but I was severe event, so this is why it's shown action.
yeah, and Arachnophilia is also paired up with Riven, so if even we pick Arachnophilia, we will always see Elise. So, Myzrael, what did you want to pick, middle or right? I forgot.
I end up on right. It was close for me, but I end up on right.
Okay, so I will also be going for right here. Sorry, Arthur, you got overvoted.
It's fine.
And now we see a white pick. We see Arachnophilia now with one of the worst cards, I would say. Afterlife, a bad card, and Relentless is a bad card.
Between these, yeah, I think the right pack has the least worst bad card in Arena Battlecaster. It's not great, but at minimum, it's a 2-mana 2/2, and it's a body on the board. And we are kind of lacking in those at the moment. So I think I have a preference for the right pack. I don't like Phantom Prankster at all, even though Hapless Aristocrat is okay, and Absorb Soul is unplayable. Whilst Grasp is pretty decent, so I'd just rather have 2 decent playable cards over 1 playable and 1 unplayable. So I think it's the right pack for me.
Even though Phantom Prankster kind of have some synergy for our deck, it's still really bad, and I'm not gonna want to pick it, even with Hapless Aristocrat, which is the best card in the screen right now. Left is bad, Absorb Soul is unplayable, Grasp of the Undying is just okay. And we have right that is, as Arthur said, the least bad. I also vote right because of just because of this reason. It's the least bad, but 2 cards. So we want better cards than worse, of course.
I think it's actually a little bit closer than you make it. Like left is unplayable, but I think Hapless Aristocrat is really good here. Like an 8, Phantom Prankster is like bad, but you might trade it away. And these right 2 cards, I don't really like either. Like I would give both of them like a 4. So if you have 4/4 and 2/8, that would still be more than the right side. But it would be split up between 2 cards, and if we manage to trade away Phantom Prankster, I'm just happy. Whereas I have to trade 2 cards away. In a Battlecaster might be better on this deck if you're like a Swarm Spider deck. Still don't like Wrath Provider, it's like a Wrath Vengeance. And it might be better in our deck as well, because we have Riven and Blade Fragments, like the quick attack would be pretty good on it. So I can get behind right. It's closer than for me than maybe. And another thing I want to point out is that even though I said I want to have Arachnophilia showing up, I still wouldn't pick any unplayable cards over it. It's just that I don't think Phantom Prankster is absolutely unplayable. I think it can do some damage sometimes against uninteractive decks, but I can definitely say it's more, I lean more to the right side as well. Would consider middle.
As I said, Phantom Prankster have some synergy for our deck, and can present with some over-the-top damage that could be needed to close out the game. But I don't think it's enough for our deck. Our deck doesn't have enough synergy. There's no like 3 Hapless Aristocrat, 3 House Spiders. We're gonna have only 1 of each. If we play right now Phantom Prankster, it's not enough synergy to pick Phantom Prankster.
So looking at what we rated on the middle and right pack, Conan rated Prankster as 3 and Hapless Aristocrat as 8, so that ends up with 11. And he rated Battlecaster as 4 and Wrathful Rider as 4, so that ends up with 8. So for him, it makes sense to pick the middle pack. For me, I rated Prankster as 4 and Hapless Aristocrat as 6, so that ends up being 10. and then I picked Battlecaster as 6 and Wrath of a Rider as 6, so that adds up being 12. So almost purely based on our ratings of these individual cards, it makes sense for Conan to pick the middle pack, and it makes sense for me to pick the right pack. So I think it's a lot down to our individual ratings of these cards.
Yeah, very interesting. In the end, it all comes down to the card ratings, not really the buckets. The buckets are more of a secondary thing if it's a close pick or if it's something you really want to force. Like when I wanted to force Rumble to show up. So let's settle on right here. And this is kind of a random pick. We don't really have one main bucket. Didn't really show the system. Like if you have, oftentimes when I draft, I have 6 or 7 of the same bucket, and then also shows up in wild picks. And I can really have the same bucket. This is a more spread one. We have multiple ones and some 2s and some 3s. And what I would expect here is that we see Relic Trackers, Arachnophilia, and Death's Door as pick 11.
Wait,
Sorry, what?
was that Relentless the first Relentless we had?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was the first one.
Okay.
Oh, the first card in Arachnophilia, Crimson Bloodletter.
So here, I don't like Retired Reckoner, but I do like Armored Tusk Rider. And for the middle pack, I don't like Crimson Bloodletter, and Arachnoid Sentry is okay. And on a right pack, I like Ixtali Sentinel, and I think Arachnoid Horror is fine. It is a 2-drop, 2 mana 3/2 is fine. So I would go with the right pack here because I think again they're a good card and a playable card versus on the left an unfairly weak card and a good card. So that's why I would pick the right pack here. I think the middle pack is the weakest.
I would also do right, even though I don't like Retired Reckoner also, and I'm not a big fan of Crimson Bloodletter. But I'm a fan of Arachnoid Sentry. I like this card. I think this one is pretty strong because you can you have both develop and stun something which gives you significantly better attack, and this effect is powerful from my experience, but I would prefer picking one good card and one okay card in Arachnid Horror over one bad and one good in Arachnid Sentry. So I would also do right here. But I think because of Arachnid Sentry, for me middle is closer than left, but right is just.
So it seems like Myzrael has played a lot of banditry recently. Maybe that's why you like Reckless Sentry that much. I think the power swing is not that significant in expeditions as in constructed, because you have like key targets you want to stun. Don't know if you play Reckless Sentry in banditry or not.
I didn't play Arachnid Sentry in Bandit 3. I had it generated probably like twice from 3, but I didn't play it, but I didn't main deck Arachnid Sentry.
I did like play 3 of those with doing set meta. I found it quite strong, but also would go with the right side here. Do that. And now as well with the pick 11, 12, 13, 14, I tend to not look at the buckets as much and just pick individual cards, because at that point you are locked into your archetypes and can't really change it up that much, so it doesn't really matter what name stays up here. Once we are at pick 11, pick 12, it's only 3 more picks, so I don't care about bucket shaping, just pick up the best cards. And
yeah, that's true. And I think in this choice we have clearly best cards.
Lily right.
Like Will in Death is just very strong. Noxan Feather is also good. Even and bad cards in the other places, both pretty bad in the left because too many attack buffs makes weapon hilt buff, but and then in the middle we have Absorb Soul, which is obviously unplayable. Even Cursed Keeper can be okay sometimes, but I don't think in this deck it's very strong really. On 2 we want to have something with more power, so it's obviously right. Just not close even.
Any objections, Arthur, or also obviously right?
Yep, I think between the three is obviously right, but this is more spells than I would like.
Yeah,
So
happens.
I would go for more units.
Okay, so pick 13. And this one is again, we didn't, all these ones don't matter. It still shows us Relic Tracker, Affiliate, and Death's Door. So this one's a little bit closer, I would say again. Being still like a Battlecaster, I think 2 action fervors is too much. And
I don't think it's close. I think it's left.
yes,
Ruin
obviously.
Reckoner is good. Blade Squire is a one drop that the best one drop for our deck probably, or 1/2 that does something, and something is help flipping the Riven, and Ruin Reckoner is just good. On the right side, we have Third Noxian Fervor, which is not something that we look for, and Arena Battlecaster that is just okay. And then on the middle, we have maybe the strongest individual 2 cards, but not with a great synergy for our deck, I think. So I would therefore pick left here.
I would also pick left here. I think in terms of power level, left and middle are similar. And if our deck composition so far during the draft has been much more towards units, for example, if we had like 22 units and 4 spells or something, I might prefer Death's Door. But given that the balance is currently 16 to 10, and that's more spells than I would like to shift it more to units, so I would go for the left here. But I think middle in terms of power level isn't that much worse. I don't think right is worthwhile because I don't like Battlecaster that much, and I don't want to pick up a third Noxian Fervor. I think they get worse in multiples.
Yeah, I can agree. I really like Unspeakable Horror. I think I gave it a 9 or something. It's just so much value, but in our deck, left is probably pretty good. And I'm too lazy to delete this. Just like I know I can write 4 differently, but it's 4 now. And our last pick is a wild pick and just random stuff and pretty bad random stuff, I would say. Is it close for anyone?
I know what Arthur gonna pick, so let him start here.
Really? Because I'm not sure what I'm going to
Yes,
pick.
I'm not sure either. Like, Myzrael, is it so close for you? Is it so clear for you?
It is clear for me. I think it will be right. I think it will be right. I didn't think about myself. Honestly, I just saw Weapons of the Lost, and I think Arthur liked this card, so I think he would go for the right here.
Why do you
Interesting.
think I like Weapons of the Lost?
I have something in my memory that like this card. Maybe I am wrong, but maybe I just checked the rating and it as 4, so it's probably just bad memory and maybe getting old.
I think he mistook me for Coda. Maybe I think he rated it as a 6. Now I'm not a huge fan of Weapons of the Lost, but I think I would still go for the right pick here because I think Thorn is okay and Weapons isn't too bad. I actually quite like Blighted Caretaker, especially with a bunch of 1-drops we have. But Cursed Keeper doesn't really work in our deck other than with the Noxian Fervors. So I'm not a huge fan of the middle pack. The left, I think, is probably the worst. It's 2 spells, and one of them is a buff. So I think it's between middle and right, and I have a preference for right, if only because the Cursed Keeper just doesn't work very well in our deck, really.
Yeah.
I would also do right here. I'm not a huge fan of the Caretaker, and Cursed Keeper doesn't well in our deck. Tom Blade is not a great card, especially for our deck because of too many buffs. And even though I like Sigil of Malice, it's probably never active in our deck. It's pretty hard to hit reputation with cards from our deck. So it's just 4-mana deal 2, which is bad. And then we have Noxian Might with Torn of the Rose, that is above average card, and Weapons of the Lost, that is around average probably, and we kind of need big bomb for the late game, so I think Weapons of the Lost should be a pick here. Right is clearly better than the others, I think.
Yeah, I agree. So Cursed Keeper is also the reason I like Battle Caretaker, but I don't like Cursed Keeper, so I would also go for the right side. And we have seen how we have a lot of random picks here with different buckets. That's what sometimes happens. If you have just go more for good cards, then you have these random picks. And what happens in your trade picks actually is that the deck will look at your main buckets and will oftentimes offer you something from your main buckets in exchange for something that doesn't fit your deck at all. So that definitely looks at your deck in the trade picks, but also at the main buckets you have picked. So let's pick up Noxian Might here. And for example, Sharpened Resolve is something that lives in Relic Trackers. Rekindler is something that lives in Arachnophilia. And Withering Mist is something that lives in Death's Door. Dawn of the Rose in neither of those 3 buckets. Precious Pet in Arachnophilia, but I don't really know. Reno Battlecaster also in neither of these buckets. That Arachnophilia, but I guess system thinks you aren't really Arachnophilia. And yeah, actually a really interesting trade now that I look at it. But basically what happens is these trades are also oriented by the buckets you pick, and of course a little bit by your deck as well. I don't think the system is really that smart that it analyzes all of the systems or all of the cards you pick in depth. It will more look at the buckets you pick. What would you do for the trade here?
I think this is actually a pretty interesting and tough pick. I think all 3 is plausible. I'm not a huge fan of Battlecaster and I prefer Sharpen Resolve. So I would make that trade, except we don't have a lot of 2-drops at the moment. So I kind of want to hold on to the Battlecaster. And also we have quite a lot of buffs, so I don't really like the Sharpen Resolve as much, so I put a discount on that. The middle trade, Precious Pet, I'm willing to trade away because it's the 5th 1-drop, and I think that's quite a lot. I don't think I'm going to be missing the Precious Pet here, and I quite like the Rekindler here because if it brings back either Riven or Senna, I think that is fine. It's not as good as a Flip Callista or anything bigger, but I think Rekindler and just essentially moving our curve a bit more to the expensive side, I think is decent so that it shores up our later game. The bottom pack, Thorn of the Rose, how many 3-drops do we have?
Not that many, 4 I think.
3, 4. So yeah, the spike in 3 is actually more due to our spells. So I would like to hold on to my 3-drops as well, but I actually also quite like Withering Mist as well. So I think between the 3 of them, I think all of them are plausible, and it's almost entirely down to the deck composition. So I think there are certain cards, certain decks in which case I'd make the top one, the middle one, or the bottom one. For our deck at the moment, I think I want to go for the middle one. Because the top and the bottom picks are moving us more into spells, which is not what I want to be doing. And the middle pack is moving our kind of 1-drops into our 7-drops, which is something that I think is worth doing right now. So personally, I would go for the middle pack, but I think it's pretty close.
I actually agree with Arthur, except that close because I think it's not. I will go middle here. I don't want to go more into spells or do bad stuff to our curve, and this is something that we need. We need the 3-drops, so I would not want to trade Turn of the Rose. So I think because of that, because of our mana curve, this is straight a downgrade to the bottom trade here. It's the same in the top side because more into going more into spells. Even though Sharpened Resolve is one of these buffs that one of these combat tricks that buffs health also, but I think our premium 3 mana combat is winning death. And we're not gonna look for that, especially since we don't have a lot of 2-drops, and we want this mana curve to go well. And then we have Precious Pet into Rekindler. Even though a lot of 1-drops can actually be here to replace this lack of 2-drops. But I think trading it away here to put us more into a resource focused side might be very worth it. Because we don't have a lot of late game, we don't have any good late game bomb, and Rekindler is actually pretty strong, even if it revives Riven or or Senna, it's still strong. It's still strong to have another copy of one of these champions when the game doesn't gonna be easily closed fast, because our deck is not that great in closing games fast. So we kind of need to find other means to win the game, to win games, and going a little more into resource focus side is I think worth it in this situation.
Interesting. Like, I also don't would top for the same reasons as you do, but it's very closer for me between bottom and middle. And for me, Rekindler always comes down to how good my deck is. And right now, I would say for me, this deck is below average because our curve is so weird, I would say. And we have a lot of late game already. Look at the Etherfiend weapons, Ixtali, Ruffle Rider, and I kind of want to keep this one drop. And Rekindler is worse in the early stages of the draft because you just have 2 champions. Once you get to 4 champions, he becomes really strong. But you first have to get to 4 champions, you first have to get 3 wins. And the worse my deck is, the less I like Rekindler. And because just I'm more likely to not get to 7 or to 4 wins or to 3 wins. And then just have a sometimes dead card in my hand. Because if I just don't draw my champions, Rekindler doesn't do anything. 7 mana 4/4 is awful. So I actually would maybe just skip here or even do the bottom trade. Rhythm Mist is okay-ish, but not really what I like. I'm fine with giving up my 3-drop because we have so many 3-cost spells. And I think we would have something to do at some point with our spells and spell mana. Not that concerned. It's not. It's close between these two and skip for me actually.
I think since even though deck is deck is bad, you're a good player, so you're probably gonna anyway go to after 3 wins. So Rekindler is just good when you play it, so you should probably pick it.
Okay, let's do this trade then and end our draft here. I will still include a picture of our 3rd champion. Right now I'm pretty sure it's going to be Thresh because he picked up Death's Door 3 times. And yeah, this will then do it for our Expedition podcast as well. I hope you saw different perspectives. Found it really enlightening and interesting. Different approaches to the game, especially this Gangplank pick was quite interesting, I think. And hope you learned a lot from our discussion. Quite enjoyed it.
So you think on the first pick we're going to be offered Riven, Senna, and Thresh?
Yes, because he picked up Death's Door 3 times, and Really only 2 times.
Okay.
I will pause the picture in the Discord as well, so that you guys can see it as well. I'm pretty sure of that.
This is despite we only had 1 Darkness Rising.
Well, you always get to offer the champ. That's always confirmed. You always get the champions you have in your deck again.
Right. So it's only the 3rd back that.
Yes. So when you have a Senna, you will always see another Senna, just like set into stone.
Okay.
Unless you trade away Senna, if you have the first trade pick or something, trade away Senna, then a double Riven, then you might not see Darkness Rising anymore. If you have a champion in the deck, you will always see this champion again. This is also why it's really hard to get 4 champions, because if you have 3 different champions in your deck, you will always see those 3 in the third, after the 3rd win, basically.
I've done that occasionally just by trading, I guess.
Yes, but only by trading, not by actually picking a 4th champion here.
Yeah.
Oh, update available. Interesting. Okay, so
Yeah, I just did that.
let's end our podcast here. Thank you for watching. Check out our Expedition Discord, and hope you learned something.
Yeah, such a blast as always. Guys, play more Expeditions. It's really fun. And see you next time.
Thanks then. Bye-bye.